I think that trust and safety practitioners all do it to make the world a better place. I think the prioritization at the higher levels of corporations, it's just not, part of their business case. It's just not part of their 5-year plan. Like making the world a better place is not part of the business growth.
I'm Cassie Coquero, Head of Communications at Thorn.
And I'm Payluz Halai, Senior Manager of Partnerships at Thorn, and this is Safe Space. So Rachel, it really seems like, from some of the things that you mentioned, that you kind of saw some gaps, particularly as it relates to the gaming space and trust and safety, and I guess felt a need to fill them or to kind of do your best to address those gaps. And that kind of leads us nicely into the work that you're doing now to make the case for trust and safety investment. A lot of the work that I do with the trust and safety teams that we work with is kind of all about making that business case, right? Taking the conversation and moving it away from being a cost center and trying to lead it into a space where, it's valuable beyond just what it may seem on the surface. So you've talked about how trust and safety investment directly impacts the bottom line. Let's talk for a few minutes about the business case. What do you most want people to know when it comes to the bottom line and the return on investment argument around trust and safety?
The business case is critical. In 2023, I ran some roundtables at the Game Developers Conference talking about the intersection of extremist exploitation of gaming spaces. And I ran roundtables with community leadership, with game designers, and with C-suite executives. The community leaders came in and they said, oh my gosh, please help me. Like, this is a problem and I see it every day. The designers came in and said, maybe it's a problem, but if I can't make a business case, I'm not going to get buy-in for anything. And then the executives came in and genuinely not for a lack of care. They were just like, what are you talking about? Because they're very detached from what's happening at the daily, day-to-day level. I mean, which makes sense. And it was then I realized, we have to make a business case. Like if we're going to make movement and get prioritization in this space, we have to show that they can show their shareholders that this is worth their time and money and investment, because at the end of the day, they're businesses. So that's when I started doing my ROI work. I did a couple pieces of work. One was with Nielsen and one I presented at GDC. This year was with Shine a Light Gaming, which was like, how can we measure behavioral change in users and how much time they're spending and how much money they're spending, if whether a bad reputation prevents them from engaging in the first place, and how that translates into bottom line gains or losses.
Yeah, and so specifically from the GDC talk, I think there was a stat that came out where it was 90% experienced negative mental health impacts from toxicity, and 10% report suicidal thoughts through gaming experiences. I couldn't believe that stat when I read it. What's your take on those kinds of numbers?
These behaviors, a lot of times we just dismiss them as, it only happens on the internet. But there's no invisible walls that are containing the repercussions of these actions. And those numbers are really important because, again, they sound like numbers or they're bars on a screen, but these are the real lives of millions of people across the globe. And we should care beyond just we care because that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But, sometimes when you're talking about businesses, that's not necessarily enough to make change. So. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? We were all this year at the Trust and Safety Summit, and I heard this ROI thing come up over and over again. And it makes me wonder, as somebody who's been working hard on this, if you're seeing traction, not just within the trust and safety community, because obviously everybody already prioritizes this work and feels it's important, but just in the larger public, or is this getting attention?
Great question, because I heard it talked about more at the Trust and Safety Summit than I've ever heard it talked about. It was almost every talk we were hearing it. And I was like, awesome. Everybody's on board. So yeah, I would say that is a change. I have not heard it talked about so much as I did at that event. And I think it's really great that everyone's talking about it, because honestly, when you make these arguments, I still get the pushback of not in my country, not in my platform, not in my community. So the more research, the better. So you can be actually, this is really universal across platforms and countries and demographics.
I wonder, Rachel, if, what do you feel like the current sentiment is around the business case? Because from what we hear and what we learn, trust and safety, while more and more people join all the time, it's an area that's perhaps even getting harder. with new technologies and new attitudes towards content moderation. Where do you feel like we are today? Has it gotten easier? What's the trend?
I don't know if it's gotten easier. I mean, I on the one hand, I want to say yes. On the other hand, part of me is like, obviously not, because I feel like they're the first ones to get cut whenever there's any kind of layoffs to happen. I think that the regulatory pressure across the globe is making it necessary for the prioritization in ways that we have never seen before. So in that sense, yes, but you have to take that with the grain of salt where everyone is now like, AI can fix everything, which it cannot. Certainly it can be used as an aid, right? But it's not going to replace your trust and safety team, nor should it. So I feel like we're in a precarious spot at the moment.
And you mentioned, in response to Cassie's question, not everyone is motivated by just making the world a better place.
Yeah.
Now, I think we can all accept that that's true, but it's weird hearing it. It's weird saying it out loud. How do you reconcile that within the field of trust and safety?
I think that trust and safety practitioners all do it to make the world a better place. I think the prioritization at the higher levels of corporations, it's just not, part of their business case. It's just not part of their 5-year plan. Like, making the world a better place is not part of the business growth, right? Growing the business is the business growth. And I say it now kind of in a way that's like blasé, but I will tell you, I've had many of those sides where I'm like, what do you mean that's not enough motivation to prioritize trust and safety?
Yeah, there was a really good presentation at the Trust and Safety Summit where we met a few weeks ago. They were talking all about it not being a cost center and it being such a big value add. But even after the presentation, I came away thinking, like how do you communicate that effectively? Because many still treat it as a cost center. Where do you see companies getting it wrong when they try and make this investment? And kind of what are the best examples that you've seen of companies that have made this case and done it right?
What a great question. Who has done it well? I'm not sure that an immediate answer comes to mind, which is a little sad, I think.
And we can steer away from specific companies, but perhaps even practices. Like, what practices and what cases have folks made that has been successful?
I think anything leaning towards going above the bar of compliance, which there are certainly people that are doing that. I mean, I can shout out a company. KID is a really great company that's doing a lot of age verification work. And they were doing that work before people were being compelled to have age verification on their platforms. And I think that anyone who's willing to invest to go above and beyond the bar are people who are doing it right.
So if people are listening to this and they need to walk into a room tomorrow and make the case for leaders at their company to invest in trust and safety, do you have any tips, like what's worked for you or others you've seen in making that case?
In a world where consumer choice is driving purchasing decisions, you are limiting yourself by not considering the safety and proactive protection of your consumers. I have 1 million choices of games I can play. If your reputation is that it's not a place where you care about the players enough to protect them, I'm not even entertaining the idea of going to that platform. So I think leaning into consumer trust, and there's a lot of research on that too, we'll get the conversation started at the very least.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about some of the more child-centered research you've done too, and what's important to them, and the fact that safety is really important to them, and it dictates decisions they make about what games to play and how to interact on those games. Am I right about that that's something you focused on?
Yes, absolutely. So the first ROI research I did was in collaboration with Nielsen, and we looked at player behavior patterns. And there was a few questions that they added on to one of their questionnaires. And it was something like, have you ever left a space because of the way you were treated? Or have you ever avoided a space because of the way you were treated? And the under 18-year-olds were much more likely to, put their money where their mouth is and change their behavior than the over 18s, which gives me great joy for the younger generation, but also provides that data point to be like, hey, the new people you're trying to get in as lifelong consumers, they're much more likely to have no tolerance for this kind of tomfoolery. I'm going to get another good word in there for you.
We're going to make an index at the end of this, a glossary of Rachel's terms.
If you found that interesting, there's more to this conversation. You can catch additional highlights and the full Safe Space episode here.